Moving on, we have Mr. Butz, his appeal for information regarding the November 8th, 2022 election.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Butz. I live in Bruce Township. Mr. Chairman, I emailed a couple of times some information and documentation and evidence. Would you be able to confirm if the board members had reviewed that or read any of that?
Well, I received emails from you.
They were given everything,
Yeah,
so I don't
yeah.
know if they read them or not.
All right. So I would hope, as public servants, everyone would have reviewed the information prior to making your decision today. I just want to go on record about that. So I'll give you a really brief snapshot. Is that, I went through most of my life working a lot of hours, 12, 14, 16-hour days, 6, 7 days a week. I was an entrepreneur. I went bankrupt once, actually, when I had 3 young children and a stay-at-home wife. Almost lost our house, but my focus was being breadwinner. And so I focused on pulling my family through that, making sure my kids got a good education, all these types of things. And so my father, actually, though, he fought in the Battle of the Bulge when he was 19 with Patton, right? So he defended freedom. And I never could get into the military. I tried 2 branches, couldn't pass the physical, had some health issues. And so, but there was something that really was driven into me by my father when he was alive. He passed away right before my 30th birthday. And that was, that son, whatever you do, you have to leave this country in at least the shape that I left it to you, preferably even stronger. And so when I, last year, decided to sell my business, I had a health issue. I actually thought I wasn't going to be around much longer, but the good Lord healed me. I resolved, and I took his healing of me as marching orders to get involved. And therefore, I chose to start getting involved. I had, prior to that, saw everything going on around, from COVID to the 2020 election to all the things I was hearing said and done. It did not make sense to me. And so I started reading, and I read a lot. I shut off my TV in December 2020, stopped watching sports, and just spent time reading. I read the Declaration of Independence repeatedly. I read the U.S. Constitution. I read declassified documents in the National Archives. And that kept me up at night because I realized at 58 years old that the country that I always assumed, was led by, God-fearing people that had strong moral fabric. I found out we committed as many crimes against humanity over the last 70 years as Adolf Hitler. Yes, sir.
If I may, we understand your passion and what might have caused it, but if you would address your regard for your appeal to the FOIA, please.
So the problem I have is that I set out to do a very specific thing. I saw bold-faced lies being spread by elected officials. Our Secretary of State, reminded me of Nixon. I'm not a crook, right? I saw our Secretary of State try to claim that we have the most safe elections we've ever had in our history. And other people have said that too. So I decided that I was going to audit the voter roll and the poll books because I felt that, our distributed government, our separation of powers, the reason we have local representation is because our founders, adopted this Republican form of government to avoid us slipping into tyranny. Because every other great civilization throughout history has slipped into tyranny. Because that's the allure of power and centralized power is that it attracts people that maybe aren't of the highest moral character. Because greed and power and money, that gets to people. The devil's hooks get into them. So these gentlemen who gave their lives, most of the founders were all killed, They bled so that we never would have to, but we have to save it. We have to continue to make sure that our Republican form of government is maintained. So I decided, my constitutional protection of my inalienable rights, to find out, do we have elections or do we have selections? And I think you've all heard the two terms, right? Elections are one person, one vote, whoever wins, whether it's my candidate or not, I'm happy as long as it was a real election. Now, selections are a whole other story. That's when powerful people basically put their thumb on the scale and they make sure that the people that they want are selected and are put into office. So I started doing this process where I was, okay, the government, I read all the laws. You can see right there two things that I disagreed with now that I was more involved, which is the legislature under our federal constitution, U.S. Constitution, has plenary power over elections. But the legislature voted to obfuscate its duties under the Constitution and assign that responsibility to the Secretary of State of Michigan, which is unconstitutional in my humble view. But that's for another day. Anyway, so there are election laws. It's MCL 168, Chapter 168 for all the election laws. Then there's the Penal Code, which is MCL 750. And there's other chapters, obviously, but those are the two I'll focus on. And so I set out to do my own audit. I wasn't going to rely on anyone else. I was going to do it. So what I decided to do, the legislature, and the Secretary of State adopted computer-based poll books. Okay, we used to have, the ladies might know, the clerk and deputy clerk, we used to have the paper poll books. People would come in, the worker would ask who they are, get an application for a ballot, they would check their identification, they would record you in the book that you came in to vote, you were given ballot, you were voter number 37, you were given ballot number whatever, maybe it's 38 because somebody had a spoiled ballot and they had to issue a new one. But then they would hand you the ballot once they verified you, and you would go vote. Then you would tear the top off that identified you, slip the secret ballot in, good to go. Give them the other piece. Well, that's the poll book, that's the poll list. And there are two Michigan compiled law sections that cover that. One is 168.810, and that is a copy of the poll list, which poll list and poll book are synonymous, in case you were curious, I've already verified that, will be kept by the clerk at the local clerk's office. So here in the township. 168.811 says that you will keep and retain and preserve that local copy for 24 months, okay? Now, that's for a check and a balance. That's to make sure, because see, it's really hard to cheat and get up to shenanigans if the control is spread over hundreds and hundreds of clerks across the country. That's the genius of it. It's very hard to manipulate a system that's distributed, okay? But if you centralize everything, nefarious individuals can manipulate, okay? So that's why we have that check. And I've had attorneys, I already had one response, I think, yeah, it was from you folks today. I have a FOIA, and where I requested confirmation that the Armada Township Clerk's Office has retained and preserved that copy of the poll book. The copy of the poll book, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chair, I apologize, is the history file. That is the poll book. Our poll book is electronic. Therefore, the file that gets produced by that laptop and is mandated to be uploaded to the Secretary of State Bureau of Elections within 7 days of the election, that is the public record. That's the originating public record that has the information about the voter roll, right? So I thought, well, I would FOIA it. So I did, I FOIA'd, I think almost, and I was ignorant, so I did some villages, and I got chastised by one or two. issue saying, we don't do our own elections. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. You know, I'm new to this. I came from the city. I grew up mostly in St. Clair Shores. And so it went well. I sent one on May 2nd, well, a bunch of them to you, I believe, too, on May 2nd. I apologize if I got the date wrong. But the city of Memphis clerk responded, said they, you know, they could provide the poll book history file because they felt I was entitled to it under the law, but they would have to redact the fields that I had put in my that's why I put it in there, because the last thing I wanted to have happen, folks, is for hardworking local public servants to get wrapped up in some sort of criminal proceeding. So I want to make sure, hey, make sure you follow the law, redact these things. And she says, you know, I can keep the birth year as you're entitled to under FOIA, but I'll need a few days. And I said, I'm not really worried right now about the birth year, so if you can just remove that column in the spreadsheet, remove the driver's license number, you know, you should be fine. And she concurred. So they gave me the file. I was surprised to see two. One said Macomb County, one said St. Clair County. I had no idea. They do elections for both counties. Go figure. I'm learning so much. So I took that file and I called a woman that I had met. It was very odd. I met her just a few weeks earlier, and she said she was from Memphis. I said, could you do me a favor, Karen, and could you go request your voting history and your change history, your voting record and your change history reports from the clerk. And I want to compare it to what we have here. And she did, and she gave them to me. And then I went to Election Integrity Force, who is doing a FOIA request every month with the Bureau of Elections, and they're getting a big download every month of the statewide voting record, qualified voter file, and the voting history. So we ran the reports, and none of it matched, and you were all given those discrepancies. Prior to that, I ran mine. I could not get the poll book from Bruce Township yet, but I will, because I'm persistent. And I was shocked to find out that when I pulled my voting record, see, I have just moved to Bruce Township December 18th of 2022. Prior to that, I voted in Clinton Township between 2011 and 2022. And then prior to that, I voted in St. Clair Shores because I originally registered to vote 18 years old, September of 82. So I've continuously been registered since September of 82. Well, the system with the state only goes back to 2010 for me, okay? But when I looked at the state's data from the December 1st FOIA, it showed I voted in Clinton Township in 2010. Well, no, I voted in St. Clair Shores, so that was odd. Looked at the FOIA data from the Bureau of Elections for January 1st, 2023, and almost fell out of my chair. It shows I voted in Bruce Township every election since 2010. So the state's data, this entity that is instructing you to delete records, history files for the poll list, produced data out of their consolidated system under FOIA, per the FOIA law, that was completely altered. And that, Mr. Chair, is a felony. So when you alter, which altering or deleting is also altering a public record, whether it's a deed, whether it's a mortgage filed, whether it's a voting record, you alter that, you've committed a felony, and it has up to 14 years in prison per occurrence. So I'm like, okay, the Secretary of State, Bureau of Elections directors, they're felons. You know, for me, it's real straightforward. I don't listen to all the noise and all the propaganda. I just look at the facts. And the facts are that our current election system is so flawed, it needs to be swept aside, and we need to start from the ground up. Because that's how bad it is, from the little bit of time I spent at it. And if I found this much in 6 to 8 weeks, I guarantee you it's just the tip of the iceberg. So now here's the problem. Things are going well. Memphis went well. Well, then I started to get these boilerplate denials. And it was all saying I was denied of my FOIA because of MCL 15.243, sections 1Y for some, sections 1Z for others, and some of them it was both 1Y and 1Z. So when you look at that, it says that they can exclude from a FOIA, a public body like yourselves can exclude from a FOIA, software, code, intellectual property, cybersecurity plans, all this sort of stuff. And I was a cybersecurity professional for over 30 years. Database developer, security. Well, here's the problem. The very next chapter of the Michigan compiled law is 244, 15.244. And under 15.244, the public body, if they have exempt information according to the laws, you are required to separate the non-exempt information from the exempt information. And you are required by law to disclose anything that is non-exempt, such as most of the things I asked, I would assume they're non-exempt. We already talked about the fact that I can't get the day of birth and the month of birth and the driver's license. I'm fine with that. I don't want anybody's, driver's license. I'm relying on the fact that the clerks did check their driver's license and they are a valid voter. So why do I, in my old way of thinking, I might change that now after this experience. I might have a different attitude about it. But the moral of the story is not a single jurisdiction provided me the explanation as required by law as to what specific data elements that I requested are exempt and why. You can't just say, oh, there's something in there, but if we told you, we'd have to kill you. That's not how it works. Okay, you have to disclose that. So here I am, I'm thinking to myself, I got to appeal all these things. This I was not expecting. I'm in the doghouse with my wife, and I'm spending 12 hours a day on this because I had to respond to 23 jurisdictions who all denied my claims. So here I am scurrying around, sending all these replies, these appeals. And the very first appeal hearing or meeting I went to similar to this, and by the way, I really like this format. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, not everybody does this format where the board hears. I think it's wonderful. I'm so happy that most of the townships do it this way, not all. Some of the townships and some of the cities say, well, the supervisor makes the decision on the appeal. Some say the city manager does, some say the mayor does. And, but I love the fact that I'm able to come here and speak to you. I really appreciate that. So the moral of the story is these boards, these attorneys started making statements in these meetings, and I have it all recorded. And when I get around to it, I will be filing grievances against most of the attorneys because they deserve to be disbarred for what they've instructed people to do. Because what the attorneys have been instructing the public officials to do is to break the law. And that's malpractice. That's malfeasance, right? So I'll give you an example.
If we could please stick to your appeal for Armada Township?
Yeah, no, this is Armada Township. So Armada Township, I contend that you did not give me a valid denial. Under the law, you did not deny my claim in a fashion in which it can be defended. Now, I never intended, like I said, to file criminal complaints against any clerks. I never intended to take anyone to court for, because that's the option. We can do the appeal first. We can do this first. So all I want to understand is why. So I sent evidence of the record altering. And do you know, I've done at least, sorry. I've done
That was all of us.
I'll pay
That's
for
fact.
that, I promise. So I've done
Nice
at least a half a dozen of these type of meetings, and not a single public official has commented that, this gentleman's right. These records are altered. I see the evidence that he provided. Everybody's worried about doing what the Secretary of State tells them to do, which the Secretary of State cannot direct you to violate the law. So when the Secretary of State and Bureau of Elections, I'll say specifically, Lori Bourbonnais, instructs Mary to delete the poll book history file 7 days after the certification, you're now a victim of a crime. You know what that crime is? It's something called MCL 750.478A. And that is using unlawful, I don't know the exact words, I normally would read it, but I didn't have my phone, using unlawful process to coerce or intimidate a public officer from performing their duties. Mary's duty is to maintain a copy of that public record, the original poll book file. That's her duty under the law. So by Lori Bourbonnais, Jocelyn Benson, and Jonathan Brader instructing all these clerks to delete it, I suggest the clerks, Mary, every one of them should be filing a criminal complaint against the Bureau of Elections because they've just coerced you. I have emails where they said if we give you the file, Mr. Butz, we'll have to buy new computers and we can't afford new computers. If that's not John Gotti style tactics, I don't know what is, okay? So the more I peel this onion, the more horrific I find the state of our poor republic, okay? So I'm calling on all of you. You all swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. And I don't know if anyone's, because it seems like no one really, I think you guys have been pounded so much into conformity that you might have lost a sense. That's why I suggest people shut off your TV and start reading the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Do the right and lawful thing, because if you violate your oath, if any of you vote to deny me my right unlawfully, you have actually violated your oath of office. And when you violate your oath of office, your office is vacated. And somebody asked me, what do you mean? Who kicks me out? What if I don't want to leave? Well, it's not a matter if you want to leave. You can choose to remain in the seat once you violate your oath of office, but now you're considered an imposter, right, and a fraud. Because every day that you sit in that seat and hold yourself out to the public as an elected representative of the people after you violate your oath, you're personally liable for anything that occurs. So if you vote to agree that didn't happen.
No, it didn't.
So where I'm going with that is, if that must be the NSA, that's who it is. CIA and trying to disrupt it. But no, on a serious note, because this is very serious. You don't want to be in that position. So I would suggest, and you know what? I wouldn't hold it against anyone that says, this is a frustrating thing for me. This is too crazy. I don't want to do this anymore. That's okay. Just step out. No one is going to fault you for that because we're in a mess. But if you're going to stay in those seats, please, I implore you, follow the law. Because you know what? The Bureau of Elections, Lori Bourbonnais, instructing you folks to delete those files after 7 days and instructing you to unlawfully deny FOIA claims. I'll give you this example because it helps, and I don't do this for any other reason than to kind of make my point. Sometimes you have to use extreme examples for people to really, if something's too close, it can go either way. But I'm going to give you an example. So my point, and I believe I'm firm on the law, the Constitution, that if the Bureau of Elections Secretary of State instructs you to purge that file, destroy that public record, the only thing that we can use, the people can use to audit the voter registration of the poll, that they've committed a felony, okay? And they're actually instructing you to commit a felony. Now, what if they told you, so I've heard the lawyers, I've heard your lawyer at 2 other proceedings say you have to do what the Secretary of State says. So I want you to discern this, let's all go back to, we've been programmed to just do whatever lawyers tell us. No, we have a mind, I would say instead of hiring a lawyer, send everybody education on the law. You won't need a lawyer. You'll understand what you need to do. But again, that's for another day. But I will say to you this. If the Secretary of State or Lawyer Bourbonnais sends your clerk a directive that we have a new policy and for every election, every 10th voter must be executed by lethal injection. Guess what? That's a felony, right? Altering records is a felony. So they're instructing you to commit a felony, whether they're telling you to delete the public's poll list or to kill every 10 voters. So you better hope, folks, that you're not a voter with a zero in it when you walk through the door. I want you to kind of ponder that for a little bit, think about it. And I want you to think about the evidence I provide. Because, please, I have a lot of belief. I'm trying so hard. Like, I pray every night about this. And I ask God, please make me better at communicating this so that people, and please open people's minds and take the devil's veil off their eyes and soften their hearts so that they do the right thing, they do the lawful thing. And I'm optimistic. I'm a glass half full person, so I'm optimistic that you will really think about this and you will do the lawful thing, which is to approve my FOIA request and produce the file that I requested, because you denied. This is an appeal on a denial, and you denied me, but you did not follow the lawful process. You did not give me my written explanation as to why the information that the Secretary of State told you is is protected under this 243 underlying 1Z. And you certainly didn't give me the non-exempt information. So your only choice to stay on the right side of the law at this moment, and I know it's a heavy burden, but is to approve my appeal and disclose the information. With that, if any of you have any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer them, but I respect you guys have been very respectful of me, and thank you for giving me the time. But I would just, one last thing. I spoke to the ladies, I went back to visit the clerks at Memphis. I had no idea that first file I got from them on a USB drive, I thought, okay, I should be done with this in 2 weeks, and then I can put together a Macomb County poll list, and then I can get the data from the Bureau of Elections, and I can compare it. Is it right? When I went back on the 30th of May and talked to them, I'm going to call them in tomorrow. I said, have you had any repercussions? She goes, no, why? Well, all the other clerks were sending me these FOIA denials. She goes, not all of them, right? Maybe half. I said, no, every one of them. And the clerk and deputy clerk were shocked. She goes, I cannot believe. You mean to tell me that every other municipality from us is doing what the Secretary of State told them to do just because the Secretary of State told them? I said, sadly, ladies, yes. So I told them, if they get any hint of repercussion, please call me, because I want to help them if they do. So I would ask your attorney, what is the sanction for you to uphold my lawful FOIA request and provide me the information? What will happen to you? Because I can tell you, they gave me that file on May 3rd, and to the best of my knowledge, this is June 14th, they've never had a single repercussion. And I'll tell you what, I think I know why. I could be wrong. They can't do anything about it because they can't sanction you for following the law. They cannot sanction you for following the law. So don't be a victim. Don't be the fall people for this. And I'm not even certain that the folks running the show in Lansing, Benson and her people, this could be sheer incompetence, and they could just be embarrassed that everything's so screwed up, and they want to hide it. That doesn't matter. They all need to be removed from office for what they've done to to our state, you know? I mean, it is what it is. I don't want anybody to go to prison, but you need to vacate your seats if you're not going to follow the law and the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butz. Well, I'm prepared to read a motion, and if I get a second, the board can debate the request for the appeal of the denial. And my motion is, I'm going to make a motion to uphold the denial of Mr. Michael Butz's FOIA request for electronic poll book records in a CSV or XLS file from the elections held in Armada Township on November 8th, 2022. This is due to the fact those records were destroyed per instructions in an email received from the Director of the Michigan Board of Elections dated January 17th, 2023. The Township can provide a redacted paper printout of the electronic poll book generated on election night and can scan or the redacted paper documents to a flash drive in PDF form. Is there support for that motion?
I will support that motion.
No?
So,
Go ahead.
just to reiterate, so, clerk, is that correct? You do not have the electronic CSV file or the electronic poll book, correct?
I don't have it.
Okay, and then
I was instructed to delete it.
as far as the paper printout, does that contain all the information that was in the electronic poll book?
It's a copy
You
of the
mean the
poll book.
CSV file?
Is it contain all the data?
It will contain, let me see.
I mean, does it contain all the data that's essentially being requested on?
It's got their voter number, ballot number, their name and address.
Is that their birthday on it?
CSV, it doesn't have a
No.
birth date on it, no. The CSV, but what you was asking for, the CSV file does have the birth date, the month, and the year. Now,
So
the
the-
CSV file, you could redact it and just put the year. It also has the, license number, which can be redacted. And I've
that-
only looked at that one time before, and I didn't even know that, to tell you the truth, I didn't even know the CSV file.
But so there was,
So
just
you
out of
can-
curiosity, because
It's
I'm
just a
not,
list of voters.
you know,
But he's looking for like the time that they actually came in and voted. Where'd he go? Right,
So the
you're looking at the
records-
time when they check in with the EP people. Right. You're looking on the CS, right, yeah. Yeah, so that, yeah, so that I don't have anymore. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, I
But
understand.
the
so the
PDF
paper
doesn't have that.
We don't have the electronic version, but
Yeah.
they
I
did
get
make
that,
a
I'm-
copy of
Yeah.
the poll book on election night.
but not
List
a
of voters.
entire copy, so the paper,
Make a copy because we don't have all the information.
yeah, that was my question.
Right, so it's an illegitimate record, so, you know, it supports by sad conclusion that we have no way of auditing elections, and we cannot use this system for another election. When I say system is people, process, and tools. Everybody thinks, well, the voting machine's come up, it's the whole system, but them instructing Gary to destroy that file. If I were there, I would go right to the sheriff's department tomorrow, and I would file a criminal complaint. They just coerced her into performing a felony to destroy that voting record.
Well, there's no question about two things. One, I'm glad we weren't the first township, and I was able to watch several of the other meetings. And two, it did give us time to read law and formulate opinions. In the situation I'm in as a supervisor, the appeals in front of our board, I can only deal with the facts. Oh, no, I can only deal with the facts that I have and the information that I can provide based on the fact that it was deleted. There's nothing I can do beyond that. So,
I just really have to say something. Fact is, the law is, and you've known that for a long time, that those records needed to be retained for 24 months. As somebody who lost an election in 2016 by 17 absentee votes, had I known then what I know now, I would have done a forensic audit on that election. I've never seen anything like what is happening in this country right now, that people are not backing down on elections. And if every local clerk would have just handed over the files and followed the law that as taxpayers, we pay for all of the training. For our clerk and our deputy clerk, we pay for that. If every local clerk would have just followed what they were taught in their training and handed over and retained it and kept it and then handed it over, it could have wiped out any thought of criminal election fraud and all of that, because the records would have been right there for people to check. And if there was discrepancies like Mr. Butz came up with, then the people would be able to take action. And that is why people, this is not dying down. It's not going to die down. And something needs to change, and it needs to change immediately, because this many people are here from all over, and I've been to different meetings, and it's a packed house. This is not going away, and I really, really encourage, like, we gotta find a way, because information, especially regarding elections, you're never gonna have people trust an election ever again if this does not get cleaned up and get cleaned up ASAP. So, I don't know, what do you suggest? I mean,
I pulled the case law of everything that you had mentioned in your FOIA request, and that led me to some other things and some other things and some other things. I pulled the FOIA and election records information off the MTA website, which also gave me more information to read. And I pulled off the retention schedule for elections, which the poll books retain until the canvass of the election is completed, plus 2 years, then destroy. Precinct tabulation data retain until election is held, plus 2 years, then destroy. And there's quite a few other items on here too, but absentee voter lists retain until election is held, plus 2 years. The only thing that is less than 2 years, I think I forgot to highlight that one. Hold on. I mean, there was something that was, it was minor, but it really didn't have a whole lot to do with an actual election record. But everything is 2 years, and the clerk specifically retention records of all records, I'm going to say 95% is forever. So, I mean, there are obviously some things you can delete after a certain amount of time, and but because the clerk is the keeper of the records, and elections are a major thing, I agree with you, Monica. There's,
you know what, and I just think that to let a
so-
bureaucrat say it,
if the
destroy
law,
them,
if
it's
the
okay.
law
No,
says one
no,
thing,
no,
you
no,
have
no.
to follow the law.
We
If you tell
elect
me or you
people.
tell me to do something
Yeah.
differently,
No,
I know I have to follow the law.
yeah.
And so I would follow the law. So, yeah, I agree.
Well, I just want to say that I definitely appreciate your passion and your thoroughness here. It is disappointing from a transparency perspective that the paper printout that you retain is not the same as the electronic file, and I can get how that adds, doubt. So,
I can show you what it looks like. It's
Yeah.
different.
and that's unfortunate. I'll say in defense of the clerk, I guess, when you get a memo from the Bureau of Election, I would say that it'd be hard to, question everything in there. They say to do, there is some trust there. It's hard to.
Well, I do take the direction from the Secretary of State and the Bureau
and
of
so,
Elections, and That's all I can tell you right now.
But so I just think that's an unfortunate situation that we're in.
It is
But given
intimidating.
what the supervisor said, I obviously we don't have the information that you're looking for, so.
You can try to recover, you can literally try to recover from the computers. Like I said, I'm an IT professional. I wouldn't
Well,
expect you to let me do that.
I've already contacted Access Discovery. That's something that the board will have to consider separately. They may be able to recover it on the flash drive.
Well, what you could do, you could say that your request is approved, your bill is approved, provided we can recover the file. You can do that today, and you can be heroes for all the voters in Michigan and Macomb County. You can be heroes. You have that authority. You can grant money to them. And I think Ms. Riaki is on good grounds if she files a criminal complaint for them coercing her or giving her bad advice. And I would strongly recommend that you look at different legal counsel, because your legal counsel should have told you procedure does not supersede law. It took me 4 weeks to learn that. I don't have a law degree. So why would you pay, I think your trustee, Ms. Job says that you paid $700 and some for legal services to this point. You know?
If you'd allow us to please finish our debate. No, that's okay.
It's Job like in the Bible. Sorry.
You know, I'm just, get all messed up.
No, again, as trustee Getzinger led to, we do understand your passion, and I can't say that it's a misguided passion. I can only deal with what's in front of me, what I do have available to share with you. There are opportunities for the township to consider turning it over to a forensic specialist who is a branch of our auditor we've used in the past for forensic auditing, and see if we can retrieve that data, but I can't say because it's uncertain. I do, in my email, have a link to their facility if the board chooses to upload it to the,
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know, if you did what I described, I would consider that you guys did your duty. You know, and I would understand if you can't produce it, then in good faith, you're telling me if we can recover it, we will. That will ring loud across the state. And it will certainly ring loud across Macomb, because there's about another 13 of these coming up, these appeals. So I would be amazingly grateful if you would make that bold move for your country, for your children, for your grandchildren, for my grandchildren, that it's time to right this ship. We have to step out of fear.
we understand.
I guess.
Okay, please.
Thank you.
I do actually feel bad for the clerk because she was directed by the Bureau of Elections in our state, and it's, and it has to be to a certain degree. I did what they told me to do. If they're a higher power, you'd think you'd be somewhat intimidated. They're almost like your boss when it comes to elections, but I would have to modify my my motion to include an attempt to recover that data from the stick. I don't know what rights we would have to actually try to recover anything from the state's computer and software and the voting machine itself, but I think potentially the USB stick is a good place to start. And again, I've already talked with Brandon Fannin from Access Discovery anticipating this, and we do have a link to start that process. I just didn't do it because we needed to go through this process first.
So you modified your motion,
I will support the modification.
which,
Mr.
can you reiterate
Supervisor, if I
that?
may,
Please.
at tonight's meeting, you need to either reverse the denial, uphold the denial, or you guys are in a unique position that you have an extra 10 days
to respond to the appeal. Because the statute provides that this board has 10 days to write an answer to an appeal. But that 10 days does not start until the first board meeting after you receive the appeal,
Which is now.
which is today. So you have 10 days from today, 10 business days from today, to provide Mr. Butz with an answer. Okay?
Then,
So I would recommend, if you want to do some investigation as to whether or not you can recover that,
let me make,
that you do that within that 10
a
days.
suggestion that I, retract my motion. To make another motion.
Sarah's got a second.
Yes.
You okay with that?
Yes.
In lieu of the fact that we do have 10 days to try to fulfill Mr. Butz's FOIA, I will make a motion to turn the any and all hardware we have over to Access Discovery and Brandon Fannin to try to recover the electronic poll book data that was deleted by a directive of the State of Michigan Elections Commission.
And what's,
Is that the end of the motion?
yes, at the end of your
Yeah,
motion.
that's,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll support that.
And so, but that's not really, voting on this appeal, so is that?
No, it gives me 10 days to tell him whether or not we would approve or deny his appeal based on the information we get back from Access.
I would recommend that after you decide this motion, then a
Make
second
a
motion
motion.
should be made to set a special meeting at which you will consider the appeal.
Okay. That makes sense. Today being the 14th, that would be the 24th. That falls on what day?
Let me look.
No, it's 10.
10 business days.
10 business days.
Oh, 10 business days.
10 business days.
So what's the second
June
Wednesday from today?
28th. It's June 28th.
June 28th. And I will make a motion to call a special meeting on June 28th at 7 p.m. to consider Mr. Butz's FOIA appeal.
I'll support.
It will be at 7 o'clock here at the hall.
So, we never voted on your first motion, just,
Well, we withdrew it.
your.
Oh, no, but you
your
made
motion
another one in
to,
lieu of 10 days
Oh.
for it, so we need to vote on that first and then make the motion for the.
Okay.
Okay, so the first motion, is in lieu- I was writing fast, so in lieu of 10 days FOIA turnaround, turn any and all hardware to Access Discovery to try to recover the electronic poll book data.
should-
And I supported that, so we need a
Is
vote.
there, we know what that might cost?
Not a clue.
Henrik,
Yes.
Marie,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Getsinger,
Yes.
Swag, yes. And then your third motion, you're setting a special
The
meeting?
next motion would be to
The
call the
June
meeting for the 28th,
special meeting.
7 p.m.
Okay, June, yeah,
at the hall.
thanks, John. Okay. Okay. You made the motion, Sarah seconded it? Marie,
Yes.
Henrik,
Yep.
Getsinger,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Swag, yes.
Well, thank you. We'll do our jobs. We're elected residents as is.
Thank you.
We'll do what we can.
And thank you for your passion and for this.
Thank you.